So, marriage and family therapist, right?
Yes.
And do you find that couples are coming to you now more so than ever, given the tough economic times we've been going through, and money is sort of a motivating factor as to why people are there?
Very much so. I think that the complications in finances can be a real big barrier in relationships. It can cause a lot of trouble, especially if there is secrecy in terms of what the financial habits are and the spending are in a couple.
What do people come to you more about? Lack of sex or lack of money?
The money one I think is probably a more prominent issue, really, because the sex is, you know, a connection, but the money is how you pay your bills, how you survive.
Yeah.
Well, I see more stress with that, maybe.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Do you recommend that when couples get together, like when they get married or even if they live together, that they have the same bank account together? Because I just wonder, like, you would be able to kind of keep each other in line if you know what each other is spending. And if I knew someone was watching my spending habits, I'd probably be a little bit more different. Or do you suggest that they keep it separate?
You know, at the point of prior to marriage, it may be better to keep it separate, just because at that point you're not really in a legal obligation yet. You don't have those ties. But if you're sharing a household, that's something to consider, is how are you sharing what's happening with the money? Both of you have to pay rent, both of you have to pay the bills, and if you're not aware of what the other one's doing, that could put a really heavy burden on you if they're not being financially sound.
I feel like I'm in one of these relationships that we're talking about, financial infidelity.
Did your wife text me? So this is going to go
my wife,
nice.
My wife has not texted me to tell me that she's watching, so I'm going to just kind of go for it.
All right.
We argue about money all the time.
Sure.
Because I am of the opinion that she is not careful with money, and she's of the opinion that I'm uptight about money, which I am. I've got 4 little kids. And I always feel like, you know, you talk about watching over somebody. I will know what my wife is doing because I will follow the bank account all day long. I will literally, and then what happens is I'll call her and I'll say, why'd you spend $250 here? Why'd you spend $300 there? Why'd you have to go buy? And then it turns into a lot of friction.
Sure.
But I feel like she's not being responsible and honest. That's my feelings on this thing.
Do you have a budget that you give her, kind of like, hey, if we can keep it along the lines of this per week?
Let's say yes.
Okay.
But then let's say she goes over. And I always feel like spending more than I can possibly bring in. So this is kind of the ongoing issue, and I think a lot of couples find themselves in the same position, in particular because money is so tight nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And I think this particular situation is more common, and it's very different from the financial infidelity. So in a component of where 2 people don't have the same expectations for money, of what the budget should look like, why it's important to adhere to a budget, that's one thing. When you have this concept of financial infidelity, it's when you're hiding the behaviors, you're hiding the spending that you're doing, you're hiding the purchases, you're not being able to be trackable via bank account, you're using cash, you're withdrawing cash, and really putting a lot of secrecy around the behaviors and the activity, and that's where it's a big difference.